I've worked at a gym for nearly 5 years now, and the amount of times I've heard, "Oh, my son got hurt on the trying to do the sit too much weight." Well, probably doesn't know how to do the right technique, and the amount of times where, and this is not me trying to be sort of over the top and think that I know everything, but some people need to be taught how to do a press up before they can do a bench press. Some people need to learn how to do a body weight squat before they do a barbell back squat. Some people need to know how to do a dowel hinge, so we use a dowel and you sort of do almost a good morning before they do a barbell or a dumbbell RDL or even a good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast. This is season 2, episode number 3. Now, you're wondering, why am I wearing a mask? That's because I currently have COVID and I don't want to give it to any of you guys. Obviously, I'm joking. I'll take this off, but I actually do have COVID, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, got COVID through family member, but feeling fine. Another benefit of being fit and healthy during COVID is that you more than likely will hopefully feel a little bit better than most people. Obviously, that's a topic for a completely new podcast. Today's podcast is very, very simply gonna look at strength training, when to start training, or sort of not sort of how to train necessarily. We'll leave that for a completely different podcast. But when to start training. When to start training is a big debate within the fitness industry and in general setting. When I've worked for gyms before, people being able to join the gym at 14, 15, I think that's fine. I think people should be able to join from maybe 12, 13. But, obviously the fact remains, about safety and competency in the gym. I think it's so important to understand that, I think there's a general consensus around when to start from a view where, safety is prioritized. Yes, I understand where some parents or guardians may worry about that, but there is also an understanding about how important strength training can be at a young age, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So, We'll start off with a little bit of a context as to what's going to be in this podcast. So we're going to go over 3 different sort of areas. We're going to go over the general stereotype towards strength training. We're going to look at what age you should start training, and then sort of how you should start training. Obviously, I just want to sort of say that obviously every person's different. Every case is different. I think no one size fits all, and strength training is that. I think that's a very, very good sort of sentence to say, one size does not fit all within the strength and conditioning field. And that's why I love it so much, because you're always dealing with a different, with a different person. You're always dealing with a different case. You're always dealing with something different. It's almost like being a detective in the fitness industry. You're always trying to find sort of new ways to improve someone. Even if it's the same person, you've dealt with them for a long time, you can always use different forms of training and different methodology or different methods to improve that same sort of principle, or to improve the principle that you've developed yourself. So starting off very, very simply, the general stereotype towards training. What is it? At a young age, I think those of you may be able to agree that a few of us have been told, don't train because it's going to stunt your growth. Don't train because it's going to stunt your growth. No, don't do too much. You're really going to stunt your growth. Straight away, I can tell you that's absolute nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. Because, various studies back that up, and I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, the quote, training is going to stunt your growth. Don't stunt your growth. And I can tell you that I am a living and breathing sort of example of why that is absolute nonsense, because I started strength training at 12 years old, and I am over or just about 6'3", going on 6'4", at the age of 22. So yeah, start training, trained for nearly 10 years now, and obviously that's not the case. So there's one example for you. So yeah, whoever probably thinks like this is or thinking that it does stunt your growth is obviously wrong, but right in a certain degree. So what I mean by right in a certain degree is that strength training can cause injury. I'm not saying it's going to stunt your growth, but it can cause pretty severe injury and long-term injury if not trained properly at a young age. That's probably what their worry is. It correlates. It is correlated, and by correlated, obviously, I mean sort of the two variables on each side of a graph on the x and y axis will sort of lead to the same point. It's linear, or sort of very steady sort of incline, where age and the quality of technique, or what we hope, is correlated. So obviously a decrease in age will probably more than likely have a decrease in technique, or sort of decrease in quality of technique, and then vice versa. Obviously as you go older, your technique probably improves, but again, that depends on your quality of training. If I train certain 13-year-olds and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, even 23s at Cardiff City, and some of them have got better technique than others. I've got several probably younger age athletes who have better techniques than the 23s, 18. So it's very, very difficult to say one is better than the other, but it possibly shows that young person's had the exposure to technique straight away. So going back onto sort of that general sort of stereotype, it's one study to back that up, and I'll put a screenshot now on the screen. There is strength training for children. It was a study done by Sewall and Michelli in 1986, which compared two groups of prepubescent, sorry. Obviously, prepubescent is before puberty and post-pubescent is afterwards. Children where one group trained in a progressive resistance training program, or sort of a program which is sort of linearly periodized and using progressive overload, using strength machines 3 times a week. And then the other group did not train, or was the control group. And this study was conducted over the course of 18 weeks. At the end of this 18 weeks, obviously group 1, the ones who trained, had an increase in strength by 42.9%. And the group that didn't train had an increase of strength by 9.5%. That could just be natural growth. In terms of body weight, the group who trained actually decreased the body weight by 0.51% and then increased by 3.48%. Could that be due to the increase in muscle mass? Yes. Could it again be natural growth? Yes. But that increase in weight was obviously still less than group 2, which was 6.66%, which obviously could have signs of obesity at young age. Obviously no means by that extent, but obviously it could, and strength training obviously could help with that. Obviously weight loss should not be focused on, or shouldn't be a result of strength training, but obviously it is a byfactor or a byproduct of this. So obviously another reason why it should be strength training, along with flexibility. Obviously this paper didn't go into exact details about flexibility, but flexibility or range of motion within the muscle tendons and muscle fibers did increase by 4.5% in group 1, and obviously again increased in group 2. Again, whether that's natural or not, I couldn't really tell you. But yeah, there is a difference of 0.9% within those two groups. So again, another reason. And within this group, probably most importantly, both groups 1 and group 2 did not have any injuries to report. So again, this is probably just highlighting the fact that, strength training is not dangerous if dealt with properly. Obviously, if someone is given a young child a dumbbell of 20 kilos and told to overhead press it, they're going to hurt themselves. But if they are taught the right movements, which I'll get into in a little bit, early on, they do the right things very, very early on, then yes, they can progress to be very good athletes and very strong athletes in that sense. Again, this isn't, again, speaking about one sort of modality or one one zone only. I think, strength training and power training and, sprint training, all these things are, again, very, very similar. They can be very similar and probably apply in all facets. When I speak about how to start training, then I'll talk to that a little bit more detail. But another study, just in case all that, James, that study was done in when was it, 1986? That's far too old. There's been way more progression since then. Well, another one done by Falk, I think that's how you pronounce, or Falk and Doughton in 2019. Again, I'll put on the screen. Reported that the approach to strength training in children still suffers from the reliance on misguided notions, claiming them as being ineffective and or more conducive to injuries than in adults. Not only are those notions wrong, but children's response to strength training is actually rather similar to that in adults, although they don't gain as much muscle mass as the adult population. Under proper guidance and supervision, the resistance training related incidence of injury is not higher in children than in proper guidance and supervision compared to adults. Strength training has other benefits for children beyond the actual strength improvement. So again, linking to the fact that strength training is not just improving strength, it's including a whole variety of factors. So in overweight youth especially, it can also improve the metabolic profile and help management of conditions such as diabetes, which could contribute and lead to the prevention of attenuation of obesity and improve mental health as well. Again, not exactly what we are aiming for, but strength training as a whole can help with that. So leading onto that second point, I think, again, it's just so important that people are training. Exactly what they're training is a little bit difficult to say exactly, because at the end of the day, some people are going to be doing various activities. People are playing cricket, football in the playground at school. So whether they aren't sort of strength training probably isn't going to help that specifically. It can, but obviously that's probably not what if a young athlete comes to me or the parents and say, James wanted to work with Stephen, for example, to improve his strength, he's not going to be saying, cool, I'm doing the strength training to improve my football in the backyard. He's not going to be doing that. He's really not going to be doing that. So obviously it's going to be focused on whether maybe that child's in the academy of a football, cricket team, or rugby or whatever. So moving straight on to the second point, what age should you start training? Now, this is an extremely, extremely broad term, because when I say how should you start training, it'll make more sense. But in my personal opinion, and this is over 4 years of experience and 6 or 7 years of education within PE and then sport and health, I don't think there's really an age to start sort of strength training. I think at the end of the day, the better someone copes with the movements that they'll do, the sooner they can progress. So yeah, a general notion to form overload applies here. So someone's form, whether they're an adult or they're a youngster, needs to be prioritized over the load that you're using on the bar. Someone may be able to squat really, really well with a bar and then move on to 20 kilos, and then it's horrendously bad. So you need to decrease that weight down and go, or maybe even go back to using the bar only, because yes, you will probably see some improvements irrespective of how poor the technique may be with the 20 kilos on each side. But at the end of the day, that person is probably at high risk of injury and could obviously result in injury if the form is not monitored. So again, that's really, really important to note. So again, in regards to exact age, I couldn't really tell you one. There's plenty of studies out there to probably give you a more exact age. Again, if someone told you, 12 is perfect, well, they're probably lying. Where they probably said range, well, maybe 8 maybe is a bit too young, but maybe 9, 10 years old is probably where you can start exposing them to the movements of the exercise, and which obviously leads us on to section 3, how you should start training. Now, again, this is a very, very vague question because this depends on the sport or activities that this individual is going to undertake. And let me just tell you this for a fact, this is just not for young athletes or individuals. I've used the example of young athletes and individuals in the first two sections, but this last section should, for example, if Stephen, again, use the example of Stephen is 10 years old and his parents have told me to help him gain some strength because he's in Brentford. Obviously, Brentford don't have an academy actually anymore. Watford City's academy. Okay, that's different to Bob, who wants to, he's not overweight or anything, but he just wants to get stronger. Completely different age range, but actually very, very similar way that they should start training. Because in my opinion, again, this depends on, the activities of that individual. You need to be looking at the athletic motor skill competencies, 8 of them, in fact. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, 8 athletic motor skill competencies. Okay. I'll again put this on the screen right there. Okay. These athletic motor skill competencies. Okay. These are so important with everything you do in life. Okay. They are a form or a base of global movements. They allow for the progression to more advanced athletic training. So every single athlete, when you walk into the gym and you see them doing a clean and jerk, a snatch, a deadlift, a squat, even, they have all done athletic motor skill competencies 90% of the time. Okay. And look, again, if you possibly see someone where technique's probably not as good, they probably skipped a couple of steps. So they probably need to go back to them. But, you can see it on the screen there, but I'll just listen rapid. Lower body bilateral. So concentric or eccentric, so up and down. Upper body pushing, like a bench press, shoulder press, upper body pulling, a row, or like pull down, for example, anti-rotation, so like a Pallof press or core bracing, plank, or any sort of core bracing is involved in any sort of compound movement as well. So that's really important. Jumping, landing, and rebounding mechanics as well. So important. That is more focused on younger athletes, probably, a lot. Again, Bob, who's in the office job, he's not overweight or anything. He's probably not going to want to learn how to jump, land, or rebound. He's not going to need it, but a younger athlete may. Throwing, catching, or grasping, again, depends on the activity. That is really, really specific into the activity of that individual. If Stephen is a cricketer, I'll get him throwing, catching, all these things, or batting, bowling. So then again, leads on to acceleration, deceleration, and reacceleration. Again, depends. If he's a cricketer or football, yes, I'll use it. If Bob, probably not going to use it. So more focus on the other 6 or the other 5 athletic muscle competencies. And the last one, lower body unilateral. So one leg at a time, essentially. Again, concentric and eccentric. So flexion, extension. So yeah, those are the 8. Again, showed you. Again, probably might not make sense, but please just pause it and go back to the video if you want to know about those. But yeah, these are so important. And some of you may be thinking, James, why on earth are you telling me this when I can just go on Google and think about it? Well, these athletic motor skill competencies are not being done by a lot of people. And I see a lot of people training youngsters on social media or even in person sometimes, and they're trying to teach them how to do clean and jerks or try to teach them sort of football specific skills. Yes, that's cool. But at the end of the day, if they're in an environment where they could potentially be a really, really elite athlete or even an individual, might well say, James, I want to try and make my football team, I'll still do all these athletic motor competencies with them 110%, but there needs to be a balance between all of them, because if they're doing far too much football training and not enough strength training, they're probably going to break down, and vice versa. Okay. So important. So important. Okay. I think, like I said, going back to my point, going into the gym, seeing personal trainer, trying to get someone to do an agility ladder for no reason. Why are you programming an agility ladder? There's a separate topic about talking about agility ladders, but why are you getting them on agility when they don't know how to they don't know how to use their lower body with 2 legs at a time or single. They don't know how to land. They don't know how to rebound. They don't know how to jump. And you say, "Oh, James, James, my kid, or I know how to jump." Well, do you? there's certain mechanics which you need to look at, and I can't give you the technical model right now straight away, but it's so important to understand that. And I said it's so important to understand because this is a topic which could result in someone getting hurt. I've worked at a gym for nearly 5 years now, and the amount of times I've heard, "Oh, my son got hurt on the trying to do this too much weight." Well, probably doesn't know how to do the right technique, and the amount of times where, and this is not me trying to be like sort of over the top and think that I know everything, but some people need to be taught how to do a press up before they can do a bench press. Some people need to learn how to do a body weight squat before they do a barbell back squat. Some people need to know how to do a dowel hinge. So we use a dowel and you sort of do almost a good morning before they do a barbell or a dumbbell RDL or even a good morning. So, it's these things. Some people need to probably learn how to do, I don't know, a pull up before a lat pull down, and he may sound that last one is probably a bit difficult because obviously at the end of the day, it's probably very difficult to do a pull up rather than a press up. But, it's about the right balance and things. A lat pull down is very different to a pull up in that sense because you are it's the complete opposite. You're kind of fighting against gravity, whereas lat pull down, you're kind of pulling this cable or pulling this weight down, whichever you choose. So yeah, building these AMSEs or athletic muscular competencies are to a very good level is essential before adding any load. Okay, so that form before load again comes into play where we think about how we need our technique to be spot on 110% before we add a single bit of weight on there. And now I'm not saying that we need all of them to be perfect before another one, but I'm going to give you an example. So again, Stephen is a footballer, plays for Watford's academy, under 12s. He's a really, really good hinger, but he's a really, really poor squatter. So am I going to hold back his hinge because his squat's not very good? No, probably not. I'll progress the hinge in a way where we can start, getting some strength gains in there, possibly very, very light load, where whilst, we do a superset, for example, we do a hinge and a squat. So that the body weight squat, whilst we get that form nailed, we can possibly use maybe a 2.5 kilogram dumbbell and start doing some good mornings. We're not going to carry on. It's a bit monotonous getting someone to do a dowel hinge 5 times a week, for 5 minutes straight. It doesn't work like that. So you can progress very, very slowly. But that's your job as a coach, or any coach or personal trainers listening out there, to be able to get spot on. That's such a fine line between, am I doing too much or am I doing too little? Okay. And that obviously at the end of the day, I can't tell you because, well, I could tell you, but at the end of the day, that individual better than most. So that's obviously what your PAR-Q and your needs analysis is. And if you don't know what that is, you need to go back to the drawing board to look at that, because that is literally the drawing board of an individual's progress. So, as I said, an example between sort of Bob and Stephen. Okay, Stephen, 12 years old, Bob, 40 years old. The differences are very big, but they're not at the same time. Okay, so obviously, like I said, Stephen probably needs to do all 8 of these if he's an academy footballer for Watford. But Bob, who's an office worker who just wants to get strong, probably needs to do about 6 of these, maybe even 5 of these. Okay, so because obviously Bob, if he wants to improve strength, he'll definitely be doing lower body bilateral stuff, squats, deadlifts again. But is his technique right first? Always look at technique first. That's what movement screening is. Movement screening is looking at, can he squat properly? Can he hinge properly? Can he single leg squat? Can he, all these things. So, he'll definitely do upper body pushing, bench press, again, if the technique's right, he'll do upper body pulling, again, for sure, pull up, lat pull down. Anti-rotation, yeah, he'll do pull-off press, yeah, he'll do core bracing in any movement, he'll do some planks as well. Maybe again, in your movement sort of testing, you can see how long he holds his plank for. Make sure he's got the capacity to work there. He probably won't be doing any jumping or landing or bounding mechanics. It's just not within his goals. You're not going to get Bob to do jump, landing, and rebounding man mechanics if he wants to just get strong, and he doesn't really need it. So you can implement that if, for example, he says, "Oh, James, I want to try and become a better footballer or improve my physical ability for football, yeah, you can introduce those 110%. Why not? But you're going to have to start at the bottom. Again, start at the bottom. Make sure he's jumping, landing, and rebounding. Brilliant. Before you add any load, you probably won't add any load for that, really, unless you're doing maybe some like sort of post-activation potentiation and like sort of maybe like you kind of use a lot of weight on the centric part all the way down, and then you drop the weights, and then you jump up really, really tall, or just like maybe a counter movement jump or anything like that. Again, Bob probably won't be doing any throwing or catching or any sort of skill work, if he is just wanting to improve his strength, so you can chuck that one off. And he probably won't be looking to do any acceleration, deceleration, and reacceleration, to be honest with you, unless he's probably trying to chase off someone in the office to give him a piece of information, or he's running late to a meeting. You probably won't need to do any of that. Okay. So again, finding which one of these are really important are really, really key there. I would say to everyone, those five, so anti-rotation, core bracing, upper body pulling, upper body pushing, lower body bilateral, and lower body unilateral are the essential 5. Those, everyone should be doing those. Everyone should be doing those. And then obviously, if they're younger or have performance goals, then add in the other 3 as well. Okay. That is your basic consensus on those. Okay. So yeah. And you may be wondering, James, what on earth are you talking about here? You're going to tell us how to start training or what? Well, I just have. Okay. So make sure you write down those 8 athletic motor skill competencies down. If you're a young athlete or someone who just wants to get strong in the gym, use those. And if you're 40 years old and want to start getting into the gym, use those. Okay. Or use these. Okay. So it's really that simple, team. It's really that simple. And a lot of people get so caught up with what they see on Instagram and seeing bullshit workouts on Instagram where people are going drop sets or bench press, which is fine when you get to a really advanced level and you really need to look at that shock or alarm phase within muscular activation or muscular processing. Okay. That is so, so important to understand. The workouts that you see on Instagram, unless they are that's why Instagram bios are so important. Okay. The Fitzness Academy doesn't have a section about myself because I will be in a few months' time having a website which says about every single coach within the academy who will have these qualifications. Okay, so really look at that. If someone who's followed, and this is no respect, I absolutely love Gymshark. If someone's an athlete for Gymshark, doesn't make them a good coach. Okay, and so and as well, please, this is so important as well. If someone's got a degree or a master's, it doesn't make them a good coach either. Okay. And experience is a big thing, especially for me. Okay. That's why I tend to value experience over education to a certain extent. Okay. Don't get that twisted. Education is really, really important. Education is so important, but make sure obviously the experience intertwines with that. I know a lot of people on my course who may be brilliant at studying, but when you get them in a gym scenario and you ask them to program a ramp warm up, they freeze, and that's the most basic part of someone's gym session. The warm up, they freeze because they're not used to it. Whereas I can do a ramp warm up off the top of my head and do it, and I also can do it in the books. I probably can't memorize everything in terms of, the names of every single exercise. I may have different sort of wordage for those exercises. Clamshells, some people call them all sorts. Okay, clamshells is where you just sit on your side and you just read your hip up like that. Some people have completely different names for that. Doesn't mean I'm wrong, doesn't mean they're wrong, but I can demonstrate it far more comfortably than someone else because they freeze. Coaching is far harder than memorizing, because coaching, you're dealing with completely different individuals, completely different skill set, individuals who will get on your nerves, individuals who will be really, really shy. You just need to develop those skills and how to crack someone and how to help someone out. Okay. Because someone who's really, really shy is not going to want you to try and keep cracking jokes at them. Okay. You need to build them up slowly. Whereas someone, you probably gel with someone really, really quick. And, you'll buzz off someone. Someone will take a little bit more work. Okay. But that coaching tips and tricks is for a completely different podcast. As for how to train, So how to train podcast is to follow. Okay, team, this is not trying to tell you how to train, because as I said, once you build these athletic motor skill competencies, that is the basic level. But these will give you a really, really, really good slingshot and a really good level for you to progress onto more complex movements, like a barbell back squats, like a dumbbell RDL, like a clean and jerk. Obviously that's a progression. Okay, so I'll talk to that in a completely different episode of the podcast. Okay, so this is not a podcast on how to train. It's a podcast on when you should start training, or how to start training. Okay, that's what's going to be called, how to start training. Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for listening to this podcast. Like I said, if you had any questions or concerns, please leave them in the comment section below, or message us on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or TikTok. Got TikTok now. And we'll leave all the Fitz Academy links in the description. Ladies and gents, there's some amazing podcasts to come with some amazing guests. Okay, so please do watch out for those. I'm in isolation at the moment for the next 8 days, so I will be filming a lot of podcasts. So please do stay tuned. A lot of information to come, team. Thank you so much for listening, and please like, subscribe, and comment. Share it to your friends and family if it really, really helps. If you're saying, James, this other guy James is really, really good podcast on how to train. Let's go gym and let's try and learn these movements. Okay, and by all means, if you want to send them to me and you get some technique analysis, my inbox is always open for individuals asking questions or queries. So I hope everyone's doing safe and well. I'll catch you guys in the next podcast. Take care, guys.